if you're going to funnel it down to a money mindset side of things, then I really do believe that our upbringing has a big effect on our mindset around it. So trying to just calm down is actually very difficult, because the neural pathways in your brain that are worrying, for example, around money, or feeling anxious because we've had a bill land or the washing machine has just packed in, the emotional brain is going, oh, shocks. Because the brain is very good at catastrophizing. Get things out of your head, because once you've got it out of your head, it often creates space. There's a myth out there about common law husband and wife, and I think it's very deceiving, because actually in a court of law it doesn't exist. I walked away basically with nothing.
You're listening to Better Financial Futures. I'm your host, John Boatman, and after 3 decades in financial advice, I've seen how small, informed decisions can transform someone's life. This podcast is my way of sharing that experience so that even one listener can take a step towards a better financial future. Now, today I'm joined by somebody I've got to know over the last 18 months, I think it is. Somebody who's become very reliable for me. She's very calm. She's up north. And Helen, welcome to the podcast. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background, both personally and professionally.
Thank you, and thank you for having me, John. It's great to be here today. So yes, I'm what I would call proper up north. Not Scotland, but I'm just below. So I'm in Cumbria. I'm based in a small town called Penrith, just a stone's throw from the Lake District. So beautiful, beautiful part of the world. What do I like to do? Yes, I like to get out for walks. We still have red squirrels around us, so I do like to try and get out in nature and see those, and the deers and the hares and the rabbits, all those sorts of things. And it's that time of year where everything's becoming into bloom, which is really, really nice. So yeah, that's me and what I like to do. What I do professionally is I help people to basically feel the way that they want to feel in scenarios and situations. So for example, a small business owner that wants to be more confident in their business, I rewire their brain so that they can feel that way. I've worked a lot with anxiety, panic, fears, phobias, lots of those sorts of areas as well. And yes, I love helping people to basically be themselves.
What's your kind of relationship with money been like as you've grown up, more so than as an adult? You know, did you learn about money at school? Did your parents teach you about money?
Money was not any sort of education, really and truly. I had a dad that worked as a milkman. So he worked for his dad, so family business. So we went from times sometimes being very lucrative, but to times being not so lucrative. So we had sort of different flip-flops money-wise growing up, which is quite interesting, because I've got 3 sisters, and our experiences around that, which bleeds into our adult world, is quite interesting how we are very different around money. From my point of view, I have been lucky enough to be able to be in a world where I can work on some of those areas, and have worked and helped myself around the money mindset as an adult. So my money mindset isn't fantastic and it isn't brilliant, but it's pretty okay, I would say.
Yeah, I think we're kind of going to touch on maybe our beliefs about money and finance from our parents or our upbringing or our environment. And I know that you work in an area where people do get anxious. And I, as a financial advisor, I find people do get very anxious about money, especially at different major things that happen in their life, whether that's children, whether that's relationships, divorce. So from a money anxiety point of view and that belief as you're growing up, do you think there's a link between the anxiety you feel as an adult as a result of maybe your upbringing? Do you think, what's your view on that?
I agree. I think there's definitely a link. I think personal point of view, who we are, what we've experienced, what we've lived through, all shapes us to who we are now. In the here and now, it shapes who we are, how we are, our beliefs, our thoughts, our feelings, everything. That's my thoughts around it all. So yes, if you're going to funnel it down to a money mindset side of things, then I really do believe that our upbringing has a big indicator and effect on our mindset around it. When we grew up, when we were a lot younger, finances were comfortable. Dad, as I said, was a milkman, and he was doing the milk business was doing extremely well. And we grew up to start off with an environment where money was okay. We weren't going on holiday and all that sort of thing, but there was no problems. There was no issues at all. But as we got older, the milk business wasn't doing quite so well, and the business wasn't making the money. And we got to a point for us where my mum had to go back to work. Now, it wasn't going back to work because she wanted to. She went back to work because financially she had to. So, as I said, three sisters. So my eldest and number three, they're not bothered about money. They'll spend it if they want it. They'll go and get it. And number three, she did end up in a few financial sticky situations in her late sort of teens, early adults. And then there's myself as number two, and then my youngest as number four, as I put us. We are a little bit more careful around money. We're not as just spend here. If I want that, I'll go get it. It's, have I got the money to pay for that? Can I afford that? So again, even though we've all grown up in a very similar environment, the way that we actually take on and absorb that information is going to be different. And you could have, for example, twins, identical twins that are as identical in any way, shape or form that we can have. Both grow up in the same environment around money. And they both, as adults, may end up with different viewpoints around money. So it's not necessarily just the environment. It's how our brain interprets that information. So it might be in some situation the interpret is in, well, money's there, money's to be spent, money helps me have a good time and all that sort of thing. Whereas the other one might be, as the saying goes, money doesn't grow on trees. I've got to be careful. But again, they've grown up in a very similar environment. So it's quite interesting sometimes when you look at things from that point of view. It's not just our environment, it's how our brain interprets that information around it as well.
Just tell us a bit more about on your professional side, because we got into conversations about anxiety, because you're kind of touching on it now, really, but how the brain works when it comes to, I suppose, overthinking things, and how does it, it's all very well saying, oh, just calm down, but when you're not calm.
It's three really interesting things about our old emotional brain. And I split the brain into old emotional brain and logical day-to-day thinking brain. So pop logical day-to-day thinking brain to one side, and let's just focus a bit more on the old emotional brain, because that's where our emotions come from. Whether it's happiness, whether it's anxiety, sadness, whatever, it's where it comes from. It's where it begins. As I said, three interesting things. The old brain has no level of logic. It's got no sense of time, and it's also working earlier than we're consciously aware of. So just quickly, we'll delve into that in a little bit more detail. As I said, no logic. The easiest way to look at this is through fears. We're only born with two fears, a fear of loud noises and a fear of falling. So if you think about any other fear out there, it's been learned on the timeline of that person's life. Fear of flying. I use that as an example because logically, flying is the safest form of transport. And if our old brain had logic, nobody would struggle with a fear of flying, because logic would kick in and go, hey, flying's all right. It's the safest way to get around, kind of a thing. So, as I said, it highlights the fact that it doesn't have logic. Your logical day-to-day thinking brain has all the logic under the sun, but your emotional brain, your old brain, has no logic at all. And sense of time. It doesn't understand the concept of time. Now, I remember certain things from childhood around money. So, for example, I remember we used to be able to, not that we ate anything and everything. It's going to sound like we used to have chocolates and biscuits all the time. But it got to a point where my mom would, I'm going to say ration it, and it's going to sound really awful, but bear with me here. So she would buy enough that made that every one of us had a chocolate biscuit a day and a packet of crisps a day. So it's our snack when we got in from school. Once upon a time, that wasn't needed to be done. So we ended up with boxes where we put ours in, and then we'll be able to choose what we were going to have after school. So that will be something that my brain will remember around money. Now, and as I said, it doesn't understand the concept of time. So if there's anything around, let's say, rationing or not enough or can't pay the bills, my brain will be going back to that younger me that's going, oh, well, we've got to be careful around money. We've got to be really, really careful. Now, you can be sitting there going, yeah, Helen, but that's what, I don't know, let's say 40 years ago. However, as the moment my old brain remembers something or is triggered by something, as far as it's concerned, it literally happened a moment ago. So it doesn't matter if it was 10 minutes ago, if it was 40 years ago, if it was 5 years ago, it doesn't matter because the old brain doesn't understand the concept of time. And then on top of all of this, we've got the fact that our emotional brain is working, give or take, about half a second earlier than you're consciously aware of. And again, just a quick example here. If you were to step out in front of a car, you don't have to have a thought process that goes, oh, red car coming, better move. You step back instantly because the emotional brain picks up on that threat and makes you move. Then you have that moment of, oh, shucks, that was close. And that's the logical day-to-day thinking brain catching up with what's just happened and what's just gone on in that moment. So like you said a moment ago, this ties into, like you said, calm down. Everything's okay. The end of the month, we'll pay the bills or whatever it kind of might be. The old brain's emotional response has already begun. So trying to just calm down or just think about this or not think about that is actually very difficult because the neural pathways in your brain that are worrying, for example, around money or feeling anxious because we've had a bill land or the washing machine has just packed in, the emotional brain is going, oh, shucks. And again, it's happened about half a second earlier than we're consciously aware of because the neural pathway messages have been sent out earlier than we're fully aware of.
I mean, I used to have a fear of flying, actually, and I think I'm much better with flying now because I've done more of it. I think I realized that the fear of flying came from my mother saying to me as we got on a plane, and we used to go to church the Sunday before we got on a plane because she used to think we're going to crash. So there's a trigger. And you've just reminded me of that. You also talked about falling, and I was linking that with money, and so falling out of a bank wouldn't be good, would it? That would be terrible if you fell out of a bank and hurt yourself. You'd associate money in the bank with falling. But no, joking aside, I think it kind of just made me think about that. The more you do something, so when in the world of finance, the more that you're on your numbers and you're on your finances, the more that you feel some control. So, and the more you do that, the more comfortable you come with it. But I think in the UK, which we're predominantly talking to an audience in the UK, there is a bit of a taboo about this. We've talked about this a bit on previous episodes, like a shame or an embarrassment.
If there's any level of embarrassment, it seems to shoot anxiety sort of through the roof and make it bigger and bolder and yuckier. And this is because the brain is very good at catastrophizing. And if we think about it from a bill's point of view, someone gets, as I said a moment ago, the washing machine packs in and, that they weren't expecting that. And suddenly they've got this another bill that lands on the mat, so to speak. The brain is going to catastrophize that and go down the worst case route, particularly if we don't have the best relationship around money. It's going to make things bigger and bolder and yuckier. So what you said a moment ago was just, again, circling back to what you said about knowing your numbers, about being aware. The more you know, the better you can then process it, do something with it. There's a saying, isn't there? Knowledge is power. And I see that on so many levels, not just, going along and getting the real knowledge around, for example, I don't know, finances and become a financial advisor. I'm not meaning it in that sense. I mean it from the emotional point of view. The more knowledge that you have around what's happening and what's going on. So, for example, washing machine has died, isn't working. It might be something really, really simple. You'd pop yourself on YouTube and suddenly you've worked out what it is and what's going on. knowledge then gives you the ability to sort that out and go, oh, actually, I'm not going to have to pay for a brand new blinking washing machine. I just need to empty the filter, for example. So again, it's that knowledge, that jumping in and doing something as quickly as possible, not ignoring it, because we know we're all very good at putting things off that feel uncomfortable. But the more you can actually step into that and take the bull by the horns, as that saying goes, and do something, the better. That stops the ruminating. It stops the catastrophizing. A lot of what the brain doesn't like is what I refer to as no man's land. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I've got all these different ideas coming in. Washing machines died. Oh, what can I sell? What do I need to do? Where can I go for money? All that sort of a thing that kind of suddenly goes on in amongst it all. And we're now stuck in this no man's land of yuck because we just don't know. Are we doing that? Are we doing this? Are we doing the other? Oh my goodness me, there's so much information in that. But if we can then, and to be honest, you mentioned a tool or a tip, sometimes it's writing things down. It's going to sound silly, and a lot of people do journal, and I know I mentioned it to yourself, John, and journaling is something that a lot of people do. Now, there's a bit of reasoning behind that. So talking, i.e. talking therapies as well, I'm going to chuck in that, and writing things down. So for example, journaling. When we talk or write something down, the brain goes, oh, you've done something with that. And then it goes, ah. Now, the silly thing is you might not have actually done much with it, but the brain gets, in a sense, tricked into going, oh, well, you've talked it, so you've done something, or you've written something down. So wherever possible, get things out of your head, because once you've got it out of your head, it often creates space. And when we create space, we can often start to access the logical part of our brains. When emotional response kicks off, it takes over the logic. The logic doesn't get a chance to come through. It doesn't get a chance to go, hang on a minute, it might be nothing serious. It just goes, oh, kind of a thing. So yes, journaling is a very, very powerful one that can be helpful.
When I started this podcast, I said to you actually before we were recording this that I hadn't really thought through this particular subject that does link to finance, because sometimes a financial advisor like myself with experience can kind of just not realize the kind of anxiety that someone can go through, even just to sit with a financial advisor. And what I've realized is Better Financial Futures is not just about the knowledge about the product, the money, the where we invest our money, pensions, bank accounts, is kind of feeling comfortable that you deserve to have a better financial future. And that can come from your previous experiences of money, I suppose. And I think nowadays with social media and looking at what others have, and as you get older, you realize it's not that important. I'm certainly less materialistic than I was when I was younger. But I think that then creates another pressure. So you might have organized your money, you might have organized where you live and affording to live, but then there's always something else that you think, oh, I wish I could do this. And then you fall back into that anxiety. And I think because we've got so much noise and so much stuff going on with social media and the lives we lead, you can move through your life with different elements of anxiety coming in. So I think, I know that both of us have had periods of our life that have been anxious when it comes to money. In my case, it was being made redundant 3 times in the 90s before I was a financial advisor. I remember one time coming up towards Christmas, not being able to afford and having that kind of shame and embarrassment, not that I couldn't afford really a Christmas. But I think you learn a lot from those times, and the little smaller steps as well help you come out of that, and you learn a lot from that. So I know that you've had different types of experiences with money, but would you mind sharing some of your personal experiences and what you've learned?
I walked away from a not very nice relationship just over a year ago, actually. It was March last year. And I wasn't married to this chap. There was basically no legal documentation that connected us together. So there was no mortgage, there was no deeds of the house, nothing had my name on it. Now, there's a myth out there about common law husband and wife. And I think it's very deceiving because actually, in a court of law, it doesn't exist. So I walked away basically with nothing. And I had to get some legal advice. And the legal advice was basically telling me exactly the same as well, that Helen, I'm sorry, you're actually entitled to nothing. But what we can do is we can follow this legal route that may be able to get you something. So it's something to be really aware of if you're in a long-term relationship. I've got 2 lads to this chap as well, and that meant nothing. I'd done the mum thing and left work and looked after the kids and done all those bits and bobs. And my my lads are teens. But even if they were little, I'd still only be entitled to the child support agency money. There would be nothing again for me to be able to go to him and go, I need this from you. So it's being very aware that actually common law husband and wife does not exist legally. And it left me in a position where I walked away from a relationship with basically nothing financially wise. I was able to go down a route where I could put what they called, if I remember correctly, so please don't quote me on this one, I think it's a claim against the property because I'd lived there for so long, contributed to household bills and things like that. I am thankful that I didn't have to take him to court and we did come to an arrangement. One of the reasons I'm thankful we didn't have to go to court because I was also told that if this goes the wrong way, I could end up paying his legal fees. So as well as walking away from a relationship with nothing, I might have had a big fat bill on top of it all. So thankfully, as I said, we came to an arrangement. I walked away, not with a huge amount of money, but it was enough, thankfully, for me to be able to use that as a stepping stone sort of to move forward. So it is a difficult one because when you fill out forms, there's often that box that you tick, common law husband, wife. And then my hope is that it will be removed. But as time goes on, it just shouldn't be there because I think it bleeds a false sense of security around finances. So yeah, it is tough. And I think I could be wrong. Again, it's just my thoughts and feelings and what I have heard from other people that have been in similar situations. It's often the woman that ends up with very little in these situations. And it's often the woman that ends up having to fight for something. Again, there might be gentlemen out there that have had similar situations. They absolutely might be. I just haven't necessarily come across them.
I'm so pleased you were able to share that. And I know you've come through that and you're in your own place now and you've got your own home. That's always lovely to hear that that's happened. And sometimes it can be so close to it, you can't see the other side. I know you've worked hard to get to where you are now. Could you imagine that when you were thinking about that separation?
It ties nicely to something that I wanted to mention. This. So when we're stuck in the yuck, as I say, it is very, very difficult to try and see our way out, to see what's going to happen, see what's going on. Yes, if someone told me this time last year that I would own my own property and that everything would turn out okay, then no, I probably wouldn't have believed them. I was stuck in a emotionally yucky kind of what's it's, and then still because I'm self-employed, if I'm not working, the money doesn't come in, so I've got to keep working, sort of around it all. But yeah, our brain struggles to see us in the future. And this is something we mentioned when me and John were having a chat previous to, is something like vision boards. Now, bear with me a minute here because a lot of people go, oh, vision boards. But what I'm getting at here, as I said, our brain struggles to see us in the future. They did some, I'm going to say experiments around it, and they used what they call functioning MRI scanners. They're basically scanners that you can actually watch the body doing what it's doing as it's doing it. And they asked 3 things. The first thing was they asked them to imagine themselves and certain parts of the brain lit up. Then they asked them to imagine a stranger in different parts of the brain lit up. Then they asked them to imagine themselves in the future. And in the majority of cases, stranger brain lit up. And again, coming back to the emotional brain of ours, it's designed to keep us safe where we are right now. it doesn't do future stuff very well. So this is where if you're stuck in a bit of a yucky situation right now, or even if you're not, or even if life's okay, but you want something more, or you would like, there's a goal that you maybe you are one of those people that really wants the house in the country, or you want a particular make of car, or to go on a particular holiday, then get your brain knowing that that's what you want by imagining it. Vision boards are a great one because they're something physical, but it might be that just every night, shut your eyes as if you're going to sleep and just imagine, just take a moment or two to imagine where you are, where you want to be. I once had got past the yucky, the financial yucky bits. I was then able to look for a house. And now when I'd been to see the house that I'm in now, I had a really, really good feeling. And a lot of people say this about houses. So it was very easy for me to imagine myself in there. I'd been round, I'd had a look. I went back, I had another look. I think I might have even had a third look. Anyway, but it was so that made it easy for me to tell my brain where I wanted to be and what I wanted to do. And when I spoke to the vendor, as well as the solicitors and the estate agents, everybody said, this is exactly how you should A, sell a house, and B, buy a house. It went smoothly. There was no major problems at all. And within, I don't know, I think it was between 6 and 8 weeks, I had the keys. It all came together, and it all came together extremely well. But yes, I did help by getting this going. That's what I want. That's where I want to be.
I mean, I've certainly leaned into, manifestation. Journaling is something I've been doing since November. Another big thing for me is taking the mobile phone out of the bedroom, leaving it away from the bedroom, and so that I'm not picking that up in the middle of the night. And a vision board, in my case, is my desktop computer. If I minimized everything on the screen right now, I could see a lot of beaches. I love to travel. And in the past, it might have been cars, might have been a particular car, but now for me, it's the memories and the traveling, and the thought of that. And it's great to be able to have goals, especially when we haven't got particularly good weather, maybe at the beginning of the year in the UK, and having something positive to think about. And I think in whatever situation you're in, there's always something to look forward to. And there's a saying that I love, which is, not every day is a good day, but there's always good in every day. And I think there's always something. And I think you leaned into really gratitude, I suppose, at the end. And again, when I started this podcast not that long ago, I didn't think we'd be having this conversation, because I thought it was very much financial. But I think the psychology of money and the ability to accept your situation, learn from your past, but also talk about it, is important going forward into your financial future. Now, I want to kind of move away from the brain, because it's hurting my head. It's a kind of recurring question. What's your biggest financial mistake in your life? So anything particular in the last year you've learned about money, but also what's the biggest financial mistake you've made in your life?
Everything is transient. Nothing stays the same. And even though it doesn't always pan out the way that we want it to, it will sometimes open a door for something else. We forget that sometimes a door needs to close for another one to open. It's very difficult when you're stuck in the horribleness around everything that can sometimes be going not where we want it to go. But to try and hang on to wherever you want it to be, that end goal. And it might feel so undoable, but if you can hang on to that end goal, you're giving your brain direction to go in. And it's surprising what it picks up on, with life, again, coming back to manifesting and things like that. It's surprising what lands in our lap when we least expect it. We've told our brain where we want to go, and it's that thing over here that suddenly comes in and we go, oh, wow, where did that come from? Kind of a thing. My biggest failure around money has got to be the fact that I didn't actually secure my future when I was with my ex. Basically, I could have been mortgage free if I had have put something legal in place that connected me with that house. the family home. He doesn't own it now. He has sold it. So I could have walked away with half of that, which would have, as I said, led me to a possibility of being mortgage free or very, very small mortgage to afford it. So I guess that's probably my biggest financial mistake, was not understanding the legal things behind what we think is okay, what we think is true.
I think, to be fair, I think there will be a lot of people out there watching this or listening to this that will be in exactly the same position. Maybe not in inverted commas the common law situation, but they're just trusting, not interested in. And I do think, and this is relevant to men and women, that financial independence is important in regard to having your own money, your own investments, your own. If you do have money in the bank, you have it in your name. I think it's important, more so going forward, that people do think of their own circumstances. Helen, I know we could speak for a lot longer. It's absolutely fascinating about the work you do. We'll put your contact details in the show notes, and really, really appreciate you speaking to us. Is there anything you'd like to say as we end, what you feel about helping people?
When I work with people, it's about helping people to feel how they want to feel. So, for example, helping people to feel how they want to feel around money. So whether it's worry, whether it's anxiety, whether it's overwhelm, whatever it might be, there might even be feelings of not being good enough around money because they might link money to self-worth and whatever it might be. It's about helping you to feel the way that you want to feel around money. And that can be whatever it is for the person that I'm working with. And I think the feelings are so important. We work a lot on doing this, doing that, doing the other. But if we can feel that way, feel the way we want to feel, that's the power. That's the real power in it and behind it all, for me anyway.
Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time, and hope a lot of people get a lot of value from the way our brains work.
Thank you for having me, John. It's been great.
My top tip this week is to set up your own bank account or your own savings account, not a joint account. After what we've just talked about in this episode, I think it's so important to have your own financial independence. So set up your own bank account.